Welcome everyone. Today, we're going to be starting our new series, The Most Hated Woman in the World. This is the story of Casey Anthony. Casey was born on March 19th, 1986 in Warren, Ohio, and she would be born to her parents, George and Cindy Anthony, and they would also share an older son, Lee Anthony. They would later move from Warren, Ohio to Orlando, Florida, and her friends, her teachers, and her parents would say that Casey was a very energetic child. She was also a child that would sit there and confide in her mom about a lot of things. And starting when she got into her adolescence and teen years, she started changing. She had created a weird habit of lying just about everything. It could be the most non-important thing, but she would not tell the truth or just give very vague runabout answers. For an example, when she was getting ready to graduate, her parents had come together and threw her a graduation party. And when they began asking questions of when the graduation was up to the day of the graduation, she couldn't give a clear answer. So her parents would actually call the school and ask when the graduation was, where they would actually inform them that Casey had been getting a lot of bad grades and would not even be graduating high school. And so Casey would actually sit there and drop out of high school and begin working at Universal Studios. Casey was also the type of person that could not stay single very long. She was someone that was always known to be in a relationship or talking to a guy. And at this time, she began dating a guy named Jesse Grund. And while she was sitting there dating him, she was partying. She was just basically living as a young teenager would out of high school. But she would eventually fall pregnant. And she would sit there and tell her friends that she had made plans to sit there and give the child up for adoption so she could actually continue her lifestyle. She would not even tell her parents. She kept it a secret. She was a very petite, small girl, so she would sit there and wear a lot of baggy clothes and try to hide it from her parents. When her parents actually found out about her being pregnant, she was actually fairly along. She was around 6 months pregnant. And she had told her parents about her plans of giving the child up for adoption, but they were not having any of it. And they told her that by no means she was giving that child up for adoption, and she was going to have that baby. And on August 9th, 2005, Casey would give birth to a girl and name her Kaylee Anthony. At the time, she was still with Jesse Grund, and Jesse Grund was under the impression that he was the father. And so he sat there and would play dad to Kaylee Anthony. But Casey would actually later go in and tell her family that she had no idea who the father was. And so when they asked about who the father was, again, she couldn't give a very clear-cut answer. One minute it was Jesse, the next minute it was some guy that would pass away after she had gotten pregnant. In which they would actually do a DNA test and find that Jesse was not the father. But even regardless of the fact that Jesse was not the father, he still wanted to stand by Casey and be a father to Kaylee. But she really just wasn't having any of it. And eventually, Jesse would sit there and break up with Casey. So Casey would actually sit there and start getting back into the single world and start partying and drinking and having fun. And when she wasn't sitting there taking care of Kaylee, she would sit there and send her child over to what everyone at the point would know as the nanny. And when her parents asked about the nanny, she would say it was Zanny, but her name was Zernanda Fernandez Gonzalez, which she would actually nickname Zanny the nanny. When they asked where she had actually met this woman, she would sit there and say that a coworker had actually dated this woman and was actually willing to pay $25 so that she could have a nanny and go to work. In the early days of June of 2008, she would actually have an altercation with Cindy, and would start packing her bags. And she would sit there and say that she had a road trip to do with work related for Universal, and she would be gone for a few days. And she said that she was taking herself, Kaylee, and the nanny, Zanny. To which George and Cindy would not hear or see from Casey for a whole month. And it would also be the very last time they ever saw Caylee Anthony alive.